Hey, friends, welcome back to your Joyful Order podcast. Today's conversation is one that I believe is going to meet so many of you right where you are, especially if you've ever walked through a season where life just didn't turn out the way that you thought it would. And if you're being honest with yourself, it felt like God maybe let you down. What do you do when the life that you believe God promised just suddenly falls apart? My guest today, Dawn Mann Sanders, knows this deeply. After the sudden loss of her husband, Dawn found herself standing in the middle of grief, disruption, and the question so many of us ask in those moments: what now? But what she discovered in that season is something incredibly powerful. She found that Genesis 1 isn't just the story of creation, it's actually a blueprint for rebuilding. And today, she's going to walk us through what it looks like to rebuild your life with God, not with cliches, not with pressure, but with an actual process. If you've ever felt like your life took a turn that you didn't sign up for, this conversation is for you. Hey everyone, I'm Leslie Martinez, and you're listening to your Joyful Order podcast. Each week, I will bring you joyful stories that will motivate and inspire you, and at the same time, bring order to your everyday life. Let's just say the show will be a mixture of preaching and teaching with a kick of motivation from your girl here. Welcome to your Joyful Order podcast. Hey, friends, welcome back. I am so excited for this conversation, and I just want to introduce Dawn Mann Sanders. So, Dawn, welcome to the podcast.
Leslie, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Now, there is so much wisdom in your story, Dawn. You shared so much. I've kind of did my research on you, going on your website and just learning of all these amazing things that you're doing and sharing your story. But I'd love to just start with first, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and about the current season of life that you're in.
I'm a Bible teacher, author, and associate minister at First Baptist Church of Glenarden, um, international now. Like we used to just be First Baptist Church of Glenarden, but we went international with COVID. So let me get that out there correctly. Um, and then also, I'm what I call a restoration architect. I'm someone who helps people restore the rhythms in their lives after they've gone through uh, a devastating loss, a major life disruption, a deep weariness, or a soul crushing disappointment.
Wow. I love the whole term restoration architect. That is like, that's gold right there. That is such a gold title to have. I love it. So creative. Now for those like maybe meeting you for the first time, what would you tell them is something that is like just part of your story, like of a redeeming story,
A redeeming story.
of redeeming,
Okay.
yes.
Well, I would actually tack this on to where I am in my current season of life too, is not only am I busy doing all those other things, I'm busy as my mother's primary care giver. And so I feel like that's a redeeming story. Because, Leslie, it's really a unusual season when you're caring for the person who once carried you,
Yeah. That that's definitely a redemption story right there. Yes.
right?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
In fact, I wrote an article called When I Tuck My Mama In. And it's about, it's that, reversal of fortunes and situations where the woman who once tucked me in, I'm now tucking her in, and how we pray together at night when I tuck her in, the same way we prayed together when she tucked me in.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I love that. You're totally gonna make me cry already, Dawn.
I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to make you
Oh, no, no.
cry.
Like good tears because that like when I tuck my mama in at night, like that just tugged on my heartstrings right now because you don't think about that. I'm not in that season, right now, so I can't relate in that sense. But just thinking of that, it's something that I guess I've never thought of yet, because my mama's still going and, she goes to the gym, she's working out, and she's just on fire, you know? So to think of that moment, it just, it's humbling though too, you know?
It is.
For sure. Well, I want to really dive into your story here and kind of what led you to become a restoration architect because you had to completely rebuild your life after a tragic loss. So I'd love for you to be able to take us back to where your story really began, of where you had to restore your life and rebuild. And your story just carries so much depth. So can you just take us back there?
Yeah, and actually it's fresh because I recently started doing some journal prompts, and the very first one I did was go back to the good before that season, that moment in your life where everything changed. And so I did, I went back to the good. And the good in my life, basically, Leslie, I felt like everything was good. I was still a newlywed. We were wrapping up um, the I guess the second year of our lives as a married couple, my husband and I. And before we got married, my husband, he expressed that he wanted to have kids. Now, I mention it like that because at the time we met, we were already both 40. We had both had a number of what I call unproductive relationships.
Hmm.
And as a result, because we were 40, I had kind of come to terms with the fact that I might not have children. But my husband was a youth minister and he very much wanted to have kids of his own. And he really kind of, uh, I had a renewed stirring because, like I said, I had released that, but meeting him, falling in love with him, seeing what a great father he would be, as he coached these other children, it was, had a dream reborn, right? That I really kind of latched onto. And so we had decided that we would spend the first year not trying. We wouldn't, as Christians, we wouldn't do anything to keep it from happening, but we wouldn't actively engage in having kids because I knew a lot of people who had gotten pregnant that first year. And I was like, I don't want to, if I can, I didn't even want to be pregnant that first year. I just really wanted to savor that year with him.
Hmm.
And so we did. And so we were very happy. We had had this year together savoring with him. And then the following year actually was just one challenge after another. In fact, on our anniversary, my husband was like, okay, it's been a year. So now we're going to start having this kid.
Mhm.
Because basically what he was saying is you're not getting any younger. So we need to go ahead and start. And so we did. And I was really happy and excited because, like, 3 months in, I thought I was pregnant. Now, I didn't have a positive test, but my body was showing all of the signs of being pregnant. But within a week of me thinking, "Oh, shoot, I'm pregnant and maybe I need to go take a test," I started to, lose that child. And then 3 months later, I get pregnant. I actually test this time, so I know 100% I was pregnant, lost that child. 3 months later, I get pregnant again, and with the first one where we tested, I said to him, I said, "Can I have time, just the 2 of us?"
Mhm.
With the second one where I tested, we didn't do that because we were, like, trying to walk in the belief that this was gonna work, and not telling people was going, "Oh, let's not tell people till we know for sure," right? Or till we get out of that first trimester. So we went ahead and told people. And mentioned that too because when you miscarry and you haven't told anyone, you don't really want to tell people because you're not really inviting them into the joy
Yeah.
of pregnancy, you're inviting them into the pain of a loss. And so we suffered through those first 2 by ourselves. And
Mhm.
that was another reason why we told people was we wanted people to be able to enjoy what we were enjoying.
Yeah.
Anyway, 3rd one comes and strike 3, right? And
Wow.
we're both and this 3rd one happens on my husband's birthday.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it was a very painful, physically as well as emotionally, and even spiritually, because my husband at that point was very much like, I don't understand. With
Mhm.
the first one, with the first two, he was my rock. But with this third one, he kind of fell apart.
Yeah.
And it was now my turn to be strong for him. And I in retrospect, understand what God was doing so much better because 6 weeks after that 3rd miscarriage, my husband had an unexpected, heart attack out of the blue, out of nowhere, and, passed away that day.
Wow.
Yeah, so you're right, I had this, year,
Wow.
loss after loss after loss.
I'm so sorry that you've gone through that, like, that pain, but seeing you here still standing and doing God's work is just, it's inspiring, and it just proves also how good God is, that he can carry you through that. So, during this time, I'm sure, like, there was just so much disappointment, and you're asking God, like, "Why me?" And also asking God, "What now?" So, what did it feel like for you to just wrestle, I mean, truly, you're probably wrestling with God, with wrestling with the rejection, wrestling with the failure, with the grief. What was the next what now for you?
Um, wow. The next what now was actually the very next day after my husband passed away.
Mhm.
So, a lot of my family, close friends gathered around me that first night when I got home from the hospital because he had this heart attack while out jogging at work on his lunch hour. And so I go to the hospital, they tell me about it. And his mother arrives. And, I've never really talked about this before, but Leslie,
Mm.
when they told her, she fell apart. I mean, she literally laid out on the ground, fell
Wow.
apart.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like I could fall apart from that moment.
Mhm.
I did not feel like I could fall apart, at least not publicly.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, okay, I'll fall apart at home privately.
Mhm.
And like I said, my family and friends met me at home and they gathered around and quiet, one by one, everybody left. After the all but my sister, and my sister says to me, "Will you come home? I really don't want to leave you
Mhm.
alone, and I have the kids. Will you come home with the kids and me?" And I said, "No." I said, "Not tonight. Maybe tomorrow night, but not tonight." I said, "'Cause I need to have, a conversation with God, and nobody needs to witness it." 'Cause
Mhm.
I thought, Leslie, it was gonna be what I call an ugly prayer, where you're
Yeah.
just boohooing, the snot, all of that,
Mhm.
and I was just like, "Yeah, no." But the next and I thought I would have it that night, I didn't. I was so exhausted that I said, "You know what? I'm just going to sleep, and I'll meet God first thing in the morning." And I did meet God first thing in the morning, but all I had were those 2 words that you just said, "What now?" It wasn't the boohoo, it was just shock. Like, I don't the day before, I felt like even in the wake of all of those losses, because my husband was still with me, I felt like I knew what God had for us, that
Yeah.
he had a family for us, that he had and that was what we were doing. We were believing that if we kept trying, that God was gonna, that we were faithful, God would be faithful, and that we would have, children of our own. And so I did. I very much was like, I don't even know what to do with this because I felt like at that point I was now approaching 43.
Mhm.
And I was like, even if I were to meet someone tomorrow, we weren't going to get married the next day. We weren't going to have a kid the next day after that. That very much I felt like the door for me having children of my own body had closed. I felt like ministry, my husband and I were doing couples ministry at that point, and so I was like, "How do you do couples ministry with just one person?" Ho
Mm.
you know, I had left my full-time job 6 months beforehand for full-time ministry, and my husband was supporting me, and so I just very much felt like I have no idea I had no answers
Yeah.
that next morning whatsoever. I just had I felt like I had a whole bunch of questions, but it all boiled down to one, "What now?"
Yeah. Wow. There's so much to unpack in that, Don, 'cause I just can't imagine the amount of, like, grief and heaviness that you had in that, and almost probably like a sense of like you felt rejected also from God. It's like, God, here I was stepping forth in ministry. We're doing this together, and you take away everything of what I thought was supposed to be the plan. Can you share a little bit, like, what do you wish more people understood about the early stages of grief that you had to walk through? Because now you have this huge life change. You're asking, what now? So now you have to move into the what now. How am I going to provide for myself? How am I going to carry on in ministry? Everything that I knew that was being laid out for me is completely dismantled. And at the same time, you're grieving heavy loss. So, what do you wish more people knew about being in that season?
The first thing is you used the word rejection, and I agree 100% that there is very much a sense of rejection, but I would add 2 words that I don't think, um, most people, definitely not most Christians,
Mm,
think of. I felt betrayed,
mm. Wow.
and I felt teased. I felt
Wow.
like God had given me this beautiful vision of my life, and He had given me this
Mhm.
beautiful vision of my life, and then tore it up. Now, he
Oh,
didn't tear it up, but that's how I felt. I felt like he
yeah.
just and that's what I mean about and I was like, "I believed you.
Mhm.
I trusted you. I was" and that's what I said and that's why I felt betrayed. It's like, I
Yeah.
did it. I laid it all out there just to have the rug pulled out from
Mhm.
underneath me. And like I said, the tease because I was like, I bought it all, hook, line, and sinker, and I was like, "Okay, well, I just feel like the biggest fool."
Yeah.
In some
Wow.
ways, right? Why did I believe all of this? And I had to wrestle with that. I write in my book about how I I had to reconcile the God I knew, who I didn't think would have allowed that to happen, with the God I now know who did. And part of that reconciliation, Leslie, really boiled down to was I going to allow God to be God? Or was I going to try to be God? Was I going to say, "Nope, it has to be my way,"
Yeah.
right? Or am
Wow.
I gonna let God be God? Because, like I said, because that's why I felt so betrayed. Because it was like, "Hey, I thought it was gonna be this way. I thought you were telling me I was gonna have all of this." And here's the thing, I did have it. It wasn't like I didn't have it. There's a passage in Ecclesiastes, I can't remember the exact citation right now, where it says, and I'm paraphrasing, that what God did,
Mm.
and nothing can be added to it, nothing can be taken away. And I actually drew solace in that
Mhm.
because it helped me to go, what my husband and I had was real and it was of God. It wasn't that it wasn't.
Mhm.
That was the enemy trying to mess with me. It was real. But what's also real is God makes decisions sometimes, like any parent, that the child doesn't like,
Mhm.
right? And we have
Yes.
to, and if we're going to let him be God, if we're going to say, you know more than I do, you know what's best for me, right? And not just with me, for everyone,
Yeah.
then I have to let God make those decisions. And when I say let, like, and let him still be God in my life.
Mhm.
Let him continue to make decisions after he made those decisions that I didn't like.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. You what you shared just, like, really highlights, I think, something that so many people are wrestle with, and we don't always have language for it. Like you said, you felt betrayed, you felt rejected, all of that. Like, to say that you felt betrayed by God, I don't think most people would, like you said, would put those words to it, because it's like, no, God is God. He's not going to betray you. But that's how you felt. at that moment, and and your emotions are valid, and I think we all at one point have felt betrayed or rejected even from God because the life that we're building or something that we felt like, God, this is, this is going good. This is great. I'm following and being obedient to what you called me. And then everything is just dismantled. And that can look different in so many different ways. I know that there are women that are listening that maybe you've been in the same boat with Dawn and had multiple losses as far as pregnancy. And you've always dreamt and you've always seen yourself as a mother. And maybe that never carried out for you. Maybe you're living a single life and you just never had a marriage or relationship that you felt that God promised you. And that can go with even a relationship as with a parent. I have an estranged relationship with my father. I don't feel like I've ever had a good fatherly figure in my life. And there's so many ways that we can feel rejection. And it's heavy to go back and say, like, I feel rejected from God. Um, but what you said was so good, Don, is that you had to go back and sit with the God that you knew, like who you knew was. And I think that goes back to having an intimate relationship with God and knowing his word and standing on it, because then you can go back and say, okay, the God that I know, this isn't the character of who he is. And be able to kind of unpack that, right?
Yeah.
So, Don, can you tell us why the whole phrase like let go and let God just doesn't work when you're carrying such heavy grief?
You know, the platitudes that I would endured, it's just not it's not that simple as let go and let God. It's not that it's wrong or bad theology or any of that. It's just it doesn't it's just not as simple
Mhm.
as that. Cuz what are you letting go of and what are you letting God do? And I say that because what I've come to understand is God's protection in a whole new way. I used to think, like, even after the first miscarriage, I joined a miscarriage support group, and the women in the miscarriage support group were like, "You're handling this so much better than me. I don't understand how you." And I said to them, I said, and I was the oldest person in that group at that time. And I told them, I said, "Look, I had to let go of the dream that I would have kids. So when I picked it back up, I was just happy to be pregnant.
Mm.
And so when I got pregnant the first time, and it didn't even occur to me that the ability to get pregnant didn't necessarily equate to the ability to have a healthy child. That didn't even compute yet. Hey, and I said, so I didn't know whether I could even get pregnant at 43. I mean, because the way people talk, it's like, and so I was just thankful that my body could get pregnant. So
Yeah.
it wasn't until the 3rd pregnancy that I started to go, "Now what now? Wait, excuse me." And I didn't think I was special. I mean, it's not like you've never heard of someone having a miscarriage. And so I didn't think it was crazy for me to have a miscarriage. I didn't think it's strange, especially at 43, right? I didn't think it was strange. Now, what I thought was strange was all of the the sequence, these consecutive miscarriages. I was like, "Wait a minute." By the 3rd one, I was like, "I thought not only did you give me this vision, but I also thought we were the kind of couple that you would want to raise, you being God, would want to raise his children,
Mm.
right? That would grow his kingdom." And so a lot of things by the time the 3rd one rolled around started to not make sense.
Yeah.
But then I had to realize that, I'm not like, I didn't think I was special in the sense of I couldn't have a miscarriage or even 2 miscarriages. But to be honest, I obviously thought by the time the 3rd, like, I was too special to have 3
Mhm.
because it was like, wait a minute, now this is strange.
Yeah.
Right. What is going on? I thought I was the person that you would want to do this because I love you so much and all of this and yeah, no, and that's why I'm saying, what are we letting go of? Am I just letting go of the desire to have kids,
Mhm.
even though I have this vision that I'm going to have children? Exactly where is this letting go supposed to happen? What am I supposed to be letting go of? The dream? And then, like I said, how much of the dream? Because I have lots of spiritual children. They'll
Mhm.
even tell you that. Right? So exactly where is it that I'm not supposed to, that I'm supposed to let it go? Exactly what part did I get wrong? And
Yeah.
what I came to understand was the part that I got wrong was God's protection. God never promised that I was going to have kids, even though I had this vision, right? Not of my body, obviously. He never promised that I was going to have kids by my husband. And get this, I have spiritual children that the 2 of us birthed,
Yeah.
right? And I'm still having them because of this ministry that I have that he's very much a part of.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm still having them, but yet God didn't protect him. God didn't protect our marriage. And marriage when one of this when at least one of you dies, it's over with because the Bible is very clear that there is no marrying or marriage in heaven aside from the bride of Christ to Christ.
Mhm.
And so a whole bunch of stuff changed, but didn't completely go away. But you know what didn't change? My purpose. I was a Bible teacher when I met my husband. I
Mhm.
was a Bible teacher when I became his wife. I was a Bible teacher when I was a new widow, and I'm a Bible teacher today. I came to understand that our purpose, that's what the part of me that God protects. His will for my life is tied to that purpose. But all of the external things aren't. So when we say let go and let God, we need to be clear on what it is we're letting go of. I had to let go of all of the things that were not a part of his will, that were not a part of his purpose for me.
Yeah.
And if I'm not careful, I want to say this real quick. I can lose my identity because I had an identity as my husband's wife and even as his widow, right? And I still haven't fully embraced his widow, to
Yeah.
be honest with you. But both of those containers are held by my husband, not by God. Even now, I recently have been wrestling as my 98-year-old mother's primary caregiver. I'm her caregiver more than I'm her daughter right now.
Mhm.
And I've been wrestling with what does that look like in this season? And how do I embrace daughtership as my mother's capacity declines?
Yeah.
Because I'm God's daughter and I'm really sure He doesn't want me to let that go. But what does that look like? So when you say let go, I'm letting go in some ways of being my mother's daughter while trying to hold on to what it means to be God's daughter. And let me tell you, walking that is not as easy in the beginning as it sounds. It really isn't.
Oh, Dawn, I'm like, I don't even know where to go. You just dropped so much like bombshells right now that I'm just, you are preaching for sure. Cause let me go back just a little. I mean, you said so much that I just want to like sit here for a little bit because letting go and letting God, like you mentioned how you had to let go of what your expectations were. You had an expectation of birthing your own children, but that didn't take away you mothering children, right? And that I think that can go in so many different ways of a certain expectation that we had of ourselves, whether it's being a mother, a wife, just like even I look at career oriented, of like maybe you felt that God was calling you into ministry and it didn't work out the way it was supposed to. Maybe God called you, you felt like to have a big platform or something, and God really just called you to teach Sunday Bible study to 3-year-olds. It doesn't take away that label, but we often find ourselves caught in the identity of what comes with what we feel is that purpose. And I know I myself went through a huge identity loss when I actually stepped away from my full-time ministry role at the church. This role consumed me, and it did become my identity. And I felt that in that season of my life, that I became more of the Martha than the Mary when it was to God, where I felt that, no, my purpose is to like do, 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 do. Then God was just like, no, I need you to sit. And that never shifted my purpose or my calling in ministry, but it shifted my purpose and calling to how I sit with him and how I serve God. And sometimes we have to, like, I had to let go of that identity as children's director in order for my perspective to shift of whose I am and the identity of who I am in Christ. So I totally can relate, and I want the listeners to see, like, there's so many different layers to what Dawn said here, in the let go and let God, but it really comes down to having that relationship with God, to sit with him, to wrestle with him, for him to reveal the struggles and what you're going through. So Don, let's go here for a little bit. Now, you had to let go of this identity of what you felt and stuff, and kind of come into a new understanding and new repurpose for your life in this new season now. So, what did it look like for you to let God rebuild your life step by step instead of just like expecting that instant healing? Because I can imagine at some point, there's still like a little bit of grief that you're carrying right now, even years out, and you're still in a healing process. But how did God allow you to start rebuilding?
Oh, um, I want to say the same way he started with creation. And the reason I say that is because with a little light, that's how he started rebuilding my life. Because I was in a very dark place. Me sharing some of those thought, like feeling betrayed and teased. And because my feelings were so dark, I questioned um, my faith,
Mm,
right? And I was questioning, I was like, God, am I really saved? I mean, because I'm angry, I'm upset. Was I ever really? And it's funny because I'm sitting up here asking God. I'm not like just like, and that was the clue, right? And the Bible is clear that we work out our faith with fear and trembling. We don't just believe; we work it out. We
yeah,
wrestle. We're
yeah.
like Jacob. And when I say we're like Jacob, Jacob was blessed because he did not let go.
Mm,
So, yeah, I was questioning God, but I never let go. I was always going back to him, going, "What is going on?"
mhm.
I'm not, even with me being as upset as I was and all of that, I was always going back to him. Very much like Peter, who was like, God, where else will we go? Because that was the thing. I had such a relationship with the Lord that I knew him well enough to know nobody was going to give me the answers but him. But it began with a little bit of light, with him, with me being in this dark place, feeling like the vision he had given me, because it was so dark, had just been destroyed. But what I came to understand was it hadn't been completely destroyed. Because, like I said, my calling, and the Bible says this, is sure, it's true, it's not going anywhere. As the light came on, and what I have to say is, as I stepped out of the shadow, Psalm 23 talks about how we walk through the valley of the shadow of death. For a period of time, I walked in the shadow of my husband's death,
Mm,
and that shadow of his death had gotten between me and God, and it made it very dark. But God is bigger, and He let me be there for as long as I needed to be there for me to move through the healing. But then He started moving aside. and letting the light, or moving Reggie's death aside so that the light could start to peek through. And as the light started to peek through, I started to get my vision back. And not specifically what my life looked like, but things that I could begin doing. And I struggled with doing that, I will say, because I could feel it moving me away from my husband with every step, Leslie. But
Mhm.
at the same time, I felt God pulling me over here. And so I was torn for a season between the life I had with my husband and the life I was building with God.
Yeah. Wow, that I think so many people have, uh, been in a dark place like that, and I love how you say you kinda go back to creation because we started in darkness, right? And then that's how it first starts off, like, it was dark, and then God had to create the light, like, God had to bring that light, and He had to restore what was basically lost for you. And I think sometimes maybe people like get stuck in the surviving part of it rather than rebuilding. What was that ever like a challenge that you sat with? Like, did you at one point feel that you were just surviving? And did you ever have that like shift to of like, no, I have to actually thrive through this? What did that look like for
Yes.
you?
Well, it looked like a very long season. I want to let people know it's a process. It does not, you
Mhm.
don't go from one to the other overnight. Um, in fact, I remember complete, like kind of like milestones or mile markers, I want to say, in my journey where people helped me see my growth. Because all of a sudden I would be at church or I'd be with a family event or whatever, and somebody would say, "You look so good," or "You look different," or you and it would make me stop and go, "Hmm." And I'd go, "I feel a little different than the last time you saw me. What happened between that time?" Right? And so some healing would go on in these pockets. So in the very first days following my husband's death, um, I didn't wanna go on. To be quite honest, this was my logic. I wasn't suicidal in the sense that I was trying to hurt or kill myself, but I was like, my husband, my reason for getting up every morning was gone, and everyone was telling. This is what I mean about platitudes. He's in a better place. Well, it's wrong of me to pray and ask God to bring him back here. He's in the better place. It makes more sense for me to go to him,
Yeah.
right? So I went to sleep every night praying that God would take me too. So I didn't do anything obviously to help this along, but I did. I for months I went to bed asking God to take me too, and as you can tell, he didn't.
Yeah.
And so after a while, and I mean a long while, after a while, I woke up one morning and I was like, okay, I'm still here. And so God, I'm starting to see that at least for this season of my life, the answer is no. Right. I know at some point, because the Bible's clear, I will surely die at some point, but it's not gonna be today,
It's not
apparently.
today, yeah.
So I said, I can't keep waking up going to bed, praying that you take me, waking up every morning disappointed that you didn't. That that I can't keep doing that. I can't keep hurting
Yeah,
like this. And so what I came to understand, I used to call that season living through the end of the world as I knew it. Because the world as I knew it changed the moment my husband died.
yeah,
But I came to understand that that's what God was calling me to do. He wanted me to live through the end of the world as I
wow,
knew it. And so I said, well, God, if I'm going to have to live, you're going to have to show me how. And that's how my ministry was birthed, because my ministry is not for grieving people. There are a lot of good ministries out there for grieving people. And so I don't want to act like that is not um, a ministry or a season that people need help with or any of that. It's just that when I was going through my journey, I found lots of people and lots of books that help with grief. What I didn't find is one day, that day I woke up and said, okay, I need to I don't wanna hurt like this anymore. Imma have to figure out how to do this without that pain where I can thrive and actually enjoy my life. I said, "Oh, I'm no longer, like, in the throes of pain, but my life isn't I'm not fully alive yet either. How do I do this?" And so that's my ministry, is helping people who aren't hurting every morning like they were. And like you said, it's layered, so it's not like they don't ever have pain, but they don't, wake up and the first thing is pain, and then they don't just wake up in darkness. Like I said, they're starting to have light, and they're like, "I'm not sure how to walk this path anymore." And part of the reason is because the tools that we used in that old season, even the rhythms that we developed through spiritual disciplines and other things with how we connect with God changes. Because, that people say, new level, new devil, and they say, new vision, new provision. Well, you need to get new vision and new provision for how you connect with God, because how you connected with Him before was different. It was for that season. Another way of saying it was you were in the wilderness, and so you had a manna connection to God. You now need to develop a milk and honey connection
Mm,
with God,
that's good.
where He's not, feeding you every day, where He's telling you you need to plant and you need to have faith for the planting
Yeah,
now,
yeah,
type of, faith. And since those are 2 different seasons and 2 different territories, even, it's 2 different lands. I mean, the wilderness is a different plot of land than the promised land is, right? You need new tools and a new way of operating with God.
yeah. Oh, that's so good, Dawn. And like you're preaching right to me because I feel like I am in that season right now. Now I have not endured, tremendous loss or grief as you did. However, I feel like that there's just this shift where what I've been doing isn't working for where I feel that God is taking me. And we like you said, we go through seasons, and there's seasons of loss, there's season of rebuilding, there's seasons of growth and uh, you know, uh, taking on the fruit that you've, kind of planted along the season of loss, the season of growth and all of that. And I've I've felt that I was stuck in my walk with God recently, and I'm like, okay, I've been doing this, but I feel like I'm not elevating from this. Like, what do I need to do next, God? And God it spoke to me in some things and revealed some things to me that I'll like share maybe later eventually. But even today, my morning routine, I have a very disciplined, structured morning routine. And it's, I have gratitude, I write my goals, I read devotion, I do a soap. I created a soap journal. So I soap a Bible verse every day. And I'm like, I need to change this up because this took me through the season that I needed it to. I need to move into a new season and new growth of I need to flourish differently in this season to prepare myself for where God is taking me. And that goes in general with life, we have to evolve and as we evolve, I think our relationship with God evolves too and we have to seek him in a different way, going even back to when I was at the church that was my Martha season right there when I was hustling. I worked like 9 years as a children's director, constantly just serving, 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 like, till I was tired and exhausted. Don't recommend that to people. But I think everybody, we have, like, our Martha season, and then we have our Mary season where God's just like, "Okay, you worked and you did what you needed to, but now I need you to sit. I need you to just sit with me." And a lot of times we don't think that that season is as worthy as the hustle and the grind season. And all God really wants is for us to just sit with him, but it looks different in our seasons of life and in our seasons of where God is like leading us and taking us. Dawn, you mentioned that you are what you call a restoration architect. And I want you to maybe just briefly as we kind of begin to wrap up here, but are there just some really practical steps that you can leave with the audience to help them begin to orchestrate their own restoration season?
I can. In fact, I detail them in my book, When Your World Ends: God's Creative Process for Rebuilding a Life. It's a deep dive into the creation story. Um, as you noted, when I was studying the creation story, I immediately noticed the parallel between the way the earth was described in verse 2 as dark and chaotic and empty, with how our lives feel when we're going through these major life disruptions. But at the end of the story, God had created the first two lives. He had blessed them to have dominion, and they had entered his rest. And so I also saw immediately, not only did I see how the darkness that we start in, but the blessing at the end, and the rich, full life we can have at the end. And so I dug deeper and I found a 7-step process for that God used to create those first two lives that we can use to rebuild our own. And so the very first one I call remain connected. And it corresponds to the very first thing God did in that story. Now it says in verse 2 that in 1 and 2, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form, it was void, and it was dark, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the deep. Hovering. That was the first. A lot of people think, oh, the first thing God created was light. And that's true. The first thing he created was light, but the first thing he did was hover. And so the very first thing I try to do after major life disruptions is hover with God, right?
Mm.
And if you're wondering why you're not moving forward, that word hover in the Hebrew is a circular motion. Do you feel like you're a hamster on a wheel, kind of just running around in circles, not
Right.
going anywhere, exerting all this energy, going nowhere? Well, guess what? God is hovering. And he's challenging you to hover too, because you don't want to get in front of him. You don't want to lag
Yeah.
behind him. So you want to hover there with him too. And the next thing he does is speak light into the world and into the universe. And so another reason why we want to hover with him is that when God turns the light on, you want to be there, right? To receive it. And we want to stay close to him so that we can do that.
Mhm.
So, that's the first thing I tell steps we can take. The first thing I say is just remain connected to him, just hover with
Mhm.
him and another thing I'll say, in the darkness, we are in such a hurry to exit the darkness. But Psalm 18:11 says that God makes darkness his secret place. And so we need to spend more time in the darkness in the sense of God's secret place, hovering instead of rushing out because we're leaving God. We're rushing out ahead of him and we're trying to figure out why is this not working? Well, because God's back in the darkness, in the secret place.
Wow. So good. The the whole hover phrase, you just hit it for me. We He circled the earth first, and I don't know that I ever realized that that word is in the first few verses of Genesis as you open it, because we just read right past that and think nothing of it because we look at there was dark and then God created light. Like, that's it. Like, you just look at that, but he hovered. Now
And
I I gotta go back and read it.
and now you also can parallel that with the Exodus, right? Because the children of Israel wandered in the wilderness. When they stopped wandering, God said, "You've been around this mountain circling. You've been around this mountain long enough.
Yeah,
You've been hovering, you've been going in a circle long enough. It's now time for you to move forward."
yeah. Wow. And I know there are so many out there that can relate in that you are in your, wandering season and you just feel like you're in the wilderness. Like I I will be fully transparent. That's where I'm at right now, where I'm just like, "God, I feel like I'm just circling, like going around the same mountain and you're telling me something, but I'm just not getting it." Like I feel like you're telling me to go here and I'm going there and I'm going and I'm going, but I'm still just going in circles, you know? That's where God needs me right now. Wow, yeah, like just like bombshells are going off in my head right now, Dawn. You were preaching to me so much. Thank you. Okay, so Dawn, as we get ready to close, I want to ask, what would you say to the woman who just feels stretched between her responsibilities or even her calling? Now, you felt that you were called to a certain place, but you had certain things, that you went through, grief, loss, and all of that, and there was a sense of responsibility weighing over you to shift your life, and you weren't sure, "Hey, I have to take care of this, but I feel like I'm being called to this." So, what would you say to that woman that's feeling stretched in just multiple directions?
I think there's an alignment problem because when we're feeling stretched like that, that's not God's rest. That's not his peace. And so we've come out from underneath that covering and we're out of alignment with him. And so we need to get back into alignment. And so I would say go back to hovering because
Mhm.
that's where we get into
Yeah.
alignment um, with him. And he'll show you during that season what to let go of, what to, stick with, what to start because there might be something totally new that you haven't even seen yet that he actually wants you to be a part of and not necessarily where you are right now. And it also could just be, like I was saying too, is the tools, right? Sometimes it's the rhythms and the strategy. So it's not that what you're doing is wrong, it's how you're doing it.
Mhm.
But the way to get those answers is to slow down. And I know we hate to do it because at least I do, right? In fact, I used to tell people that my husband was phlegmatic and I'm choleric, so and melancholy. So I'm like full steam ahead, right, all the time. And he being phlegmatic was very much more laid back. And I said that God gave him to me to slow me down because I was always just running ahead of God. But my husband mate would always be like, wait a minute, you know, what are we
Yeah.
doing? What's going on? So yeah, we need to kind of slow down. And not all of us do, because like I was just saying, my husband was phlegmatic. Some of us need to speed up. But but either way, we're out of alignment. Because yes, I'm teaching a class right now on purpose. I was teaching about fear, and some of the young ladies were like, "How am I afraid when I don't even know what it is that my purpose is?" And I was like, "Well, could it be that your fear is that you might make a mistake, and that it isn't that you don't have signs of what your purpose might be? It's that you're afraid that if you're not like 100% sure, and if you step that way, you're afraid you're going to step wrong." And I'm like, God can find you. If
Yeah.
you step out wrong, if that's the posture you're in, if you're like me and you're always stepping, you need to slow down. But if you're someone who's like super cautious, maybe it's that you need to go ahead and trust God that even if you make a mistake, he's bigger than your mistake and that he can find you. It's not like you're going to go off into the wilderness and get lost. He
Mhm.
knows where you are all the time.
Yeah. Oh, so good, Dawn. So good. Thank you. There's so much even there to unpack because like I'll go to just personally in feeling that like my husband and I were opposite of what you and your husband were. He's the like go go go. He wants to do everything and like everything is now 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 now. Where I'm more a little more methodical and like, hey, let's slow down. Like, no, we don't have to say yes to that. Like, let's think this through. And then he's kind of like, I need you to catch up with me, kind of thing. And I'm like, I need you to slow down. And this is after 25 years of marriage, okay, Dawn? So we circle around each other in those ways, and right now, he is just like, "Go, go, go, go," and I'm really like, "We just need to slow down. We need to say no. We need to create boundaries. We need to, like, not have our hand in everything," kind of thing. there's so many women out there that, just struggle with the different seasons, and like you said, the fear of stepping into their calling, because there's this sense of, "I have to be perfect. I have to have it all together." And that is a fear of the enemy. I lived that for a really long time, and having that weight of feeling that you have to be perfect, it will delay your calling and your purpose for sure, and I am an example of that, and I know that fear all too well, and now I've stepped into the place where I'm like, "Okay, I feel like God told me to do this, and I'm trying it, and I think I'm trying this," and failure, 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 but I'm like, "But at least I tried." So many different going from one perspective to another, but, Dawn, just thank you so much. You spoke to me. If none of my other listeners got anything from it, you came here for me today. I guess I wanna say you were a selfish guest, in that I just feel so much of what you shared was just, what I needed to hear, today, especially for the season that I'm in right now. But before we wrap up, Dawn, can you just share with our listeners how they can connect with you and just learn more about your work?
Oh, yes. You can find me at dawnmansanders.com. That's my website, and there's a whole lot you can learn about me there. And you can also follow me on social media, at Dawn Mann Sanders. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, and LinkedIn.
Awesome. And I will connect everything in the show notes, including the link to your book also, so that the listeners can go and grab that, because I myself am gonna have to go grab a copy and read your story there. But just an amazing conversation, Don. So thank you so much. And if there is just one thing that I hope that the listeners can take away from today, it's that just because your life just doesn't go the way that you plan doesn't mean that God is absent in the process. Sometimes, what feels like rejection is actually redirection into something deeper, something more aligned, and even something that you would not have seen any other way. And we can see that how Dawn just reframed so many thoughts and her purpose for us. So I hope that it just spoke so much value to you. If this episode spoke to you, I just want to encourage you to go out and share it. Don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend, send it to someone who is just walking through a hard season right now, or post it and tag both Dawn and I on social, because we would love to see and know this episode encouraged you. And until next time, friend, just remember to go chase joy.